Thank you. Welcome. I'm seeing if I'm on. Can you hear me okay? Great. Welcome. I am so happy to be here today at the Riordan Clinic. Really glad to be with you. And if it's okay, I'd like to get started with a story about my past. The kids bring this up from time to time, and we laugh about it now. They even have a name for it. It's the mozzarella cheese stick incident. And it started out, just innocent enough. We were out to dinner, the family, and having a good time. The waitress came, and she had our cheese sticks. There were only 2 of them. They looked like they'd been sitting around all day long. I had a major come apart in the restaurant, a meltdown. Probably people in the restaurant remember this day. But it wasn't about the cheese sticks. At that time in my life, I had a very high-profile, demanding job. I had young children that I was caring for and aging parents. I traveled a lot, high quotas, and a husband. On the outside, everything looked okay. You wouldn't know it. And I looked around at my coworkers. We were all basically doing the very same thing, coping just as best we could. Nobody really talks about suffering in middle-class America. We don't bring it up. We think that suffering exists in a third world country where they don't have enough food and water. How can we suffer? Because we have everything we need. When I look back at myself during those times, a big house, cars in the garage, clothes, shoes. We have a new term for it now, and it's the affluent sufferers. Because inside, I was struggling with it all. I was out of control. And so while we can laugh about it now, right about the same time of the mozzarella cheese stick incident, not long after, I was hospitalized for a major mood disorder. So that was a very, very wisdom-gathering time for me. And the family, we don't bring it up. Obviously, I've grown from there. But I wanted to share it with you, and basically because, this is a talk, and I have slides and PowerPoints, but let's kind of treat it like we're at my house, and we're sitting on the couch, and we're just talking about some shared things, okay? So if you have questions during the presentation or something comes up, please raise your hand. I want it to be very informal and interactive. But one of the main things that I've learned is that it's not our fault. Our thoughts, we're wired very primitively. And this goes back to, being in the fight, flight, freeze syndrome. Our minds still think that we're on the plains of Africa, that we're being chased by tigers. We don't know the difference now in our daily life between tigers and urgent emails. It's just all coming so very fast. And some of the statistics, fight, flight, or freeze, it's all the amygdala. And the amygdala is the part of our brain right in the center that replies to fear. It's a good response because it keeps us active, it keeps us vigilant. But if we are always hyper aroused, we never calm down. Never. We're always in that cycling phase. So our prefrontal cortex is the area of the brain, and they show it like this. So the prefrontal cortex right there is the area of our brain that provides logic and reasoning. So if you are in modern society, it's always going. We never get a chance to really turn our brains off and reset and reboot. Stress. Stress is killing us now. And there is science and evidence that supports this. 90% of all doctor's visits are because of stress. So if you visited the doctor in the last year, think about why were you there? And just some more statistics, 60% of all chronic illness has that stress-related component. So stress is kind of the nebulous term, but bringing stress down to the diseases that we see in our lives, so cancer, diabetes, chronic pain, anxiety, depression, those are all kind of outgrowths from stress, how our body produces things of stress. So how can you tell if you have too much stress in your life? Just, asking the question out to you now, who has too much stress in your life? Thank you for being so honest and participating with me, because it's true. We have stress. We can't turn it off. And 80% of people who work nowadays say they have stress related to the job. And half of those people say they would like help managing it. So that's how prominent stress is in our lives. And a way to think about it too, stress is suffering for modern day people. But there are many ways that it shows up in disease, but a very common thing that, shows up now is lack of sleep. So on a night, if you wake up, or if you don't go to sleep, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're tossing and you're turning, you giggled a little bit, thank you but you're tossing and you're turning, you can't turn your brain off, no matter what you try to do. And you're thinking about thoughts of the past, it might be last week, it might be 5 years ago. Or you're, obsessed with the future, what's going to happen tomorrow, a week ahead of time. Or maybe you're just lying in bed, tossing and turning and saying, what is it all about, really? These are the big questions that go on. And lack of sleep is really, it's an outgrowth of stress as well. And what happens is that you roll out of bed the next morning and you have things to do, but you're exhausted. You haven't slept the night before, but you have to go on to work, you have family to care for, you have obligations and duties. So what do? You grab a cup of coffee, you grab an energy drink, and you trudge out the door. And you tell everybody, you kind of brag. It's like, oh, I am so stressed. I'm exhausted. I'm sleepy. And, I'm so busy. I've got so much to do. And it's really, we wear busyness nowadays like a badge of honor. That makes us someone very, very special because we're busy and exhausted. Do you think life has to be like that? Really? There's a different way to live. So after the time with stress, with being in the hospital, I was able to do a very deep dive inside. And I looked at, what in my life brought me joy and what stressed me out. And it was at that time I discovered mindfulness. And mindfulness is a tool, it's a bridge really to get you back to joy. And I had no idea. I didn't know that I could live life like this. And it's not like, my life changed dramatically overnight. I still had the children, the parents, the husband, the job. But with mindfulness, I discovered skills and techniques that I was able to create a pause, to create spaciousness in my life. So when stress would happen, and it always does, instead of reacting like you're on fire, with mindfulness, you have the pause and you're able to respond to stress. And when you respond to stress, you're coming from a place that's calm, and it's thoughtful, and it's mindful. And you sleep better at night. So you've got to love that. Joy, again, it's just really, the bridge. Mindfulness was the bridge to get to joy. Are you all familiar with mindfulness? Yeah, great. Does anybody have a current mindfulness practice? Just curious. Would you like to tell us about it?
Yeah, I guess I start my day with breathing intentionally because I find that it's really easy to just move into your life without any kind of thought. And so breathing and then just dropping into, right now I'm just doing it it, so I kind of switch it up as I go. Because some days I'll just sit and be quiet for like 5 minutes, and sometimes that's all I need or have time for.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the quality, and I think really just the building the habit and the practice of doing it, whether it's like, oh, I feel so great after it's done or not, it's still just showing up and giving yourself what you need.
That is tremendous, and I'm going to kind of repeat it too because they're doing filming, so it may not have picked up on your voice. But and you can stop me if I don't get it right. But just really living life more intentionally, and you're very flexible with your practice in that you do a guided meditation when you can, or if it's just sitting for 5 minutes and breathing to start your day. Did I miss anything? But that's wonderful, and it's as simple as that. But, the part of it is, too, is mindfulness is easy. It's easy, but it's not simple. Because you do have to devote time to it. It's disciplined. But, you're in it for the long haul type of thing. Do you find? Great. So, again, mindfulness can lead you right to joy. And this is the classic definition of mindfulness. So it's the awareness that develops from paying attention on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So I'm going to let that settle in. Think about it. Paying attention on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So taking it just bit by bit. Paying attention on purpose in today's society, wow. They say that we live now in an attention economy. So an attention economy is something is always there wanting our attention, vying for our attention. Online, they want you to read this, do this, buy this, grabbing our attention. And then if you have families or young children, I always think about the young children with mom, mom, mom. People want our attention too. We never get a chance to really kind of escape all those things. So think about this too. When you wake up in the morning, what's the very first thing that you do? You read my mind. So if you grab your cell phone first thing in the morning, you're giving your attention away. That's the very first thing in the morning. And it can keep you seduced and enthralled the rest of the day. So one way is when you wake up in the morning, delay that. Maybe lean over and kiss your spouse. Go say hello to your children. Have a cup of coffee without any interruptions. Something to try, something to approach mindfully. Because the statistics, our cell phones, they're designed to really, become an addiction to us. They want you in on that and using your cell phone all the time to be online, to be distracted. So think about the average person checks their cell phone 200 times a day. Can you even imagine? And it's not unusual for people to get over 200 emails a day. It's an avalanche. And then if you think about social media and our time spent on social media, it can be very destructive as well. Destructive in the way that there are a lot of negative posts out there and that can get you riled up. Or you can begin to compare your life. Because what people post on Facebook is, their best shots with filters. Everybody looks good. The family is, perfectly posed. And you can start to compare your own life to that. And you might think, oh, I am not good enough. This is not, I'm doing something wrong here. So stepping away from all the attention grabbing, all the distraction that's going on can put you in a more mindful state. Okay, the next part of the definition, living in the present moment. How rare is it to be in the present moment? So just looking at this slide, you can see a woman, there she is at work. She's thinking about vacation. She can't wait till the weekend or vacation, or some people are at work and they can't wait till retirement. It's always, they are somewhere else with their mind. Finally, you get to go on that dream vacation. You're in the pool, You've got, your margarita in hand, and you're thinking about back home in Wichita and thinking about a report that you have due at work, or maybe you're worried about the kids, what they're up to while you're away. Your mind isn't where your body is. Then you have the other guy in the white t-shirt, and you wonder, what is he thinking about? Where are his thoughts right now? But just, somewhere else. They're somewhere else. They're not with you in your body at the present moment. Harvard did a very large study about this. And what they did is they telephoned people just to check in and see, what are you thinking about? Are you aware of what you're thinking about? And you know what they found? They found that 47% of the time, our minds are wandering. So these are the times when you are distracted, you're unfocused, you're on autopilot. 47% of the time is half your life. And how this shows up, how you can test if it's real. Think about a day in your life, and you've got your to-do list out. It's the end of the day, and you can see things checked off your to-do list. You've accomplished some things, you've been busy, but you try to recall details about a meeting at 2 o'clock. You draw a blank. How you drove to an appointment. You wonder, how did I get there? Or even maybe what you had for lunch. Details are missing. And it's that 47% of details in our life, those are the moments that, we could be missing. One other little snapshot that you can think about in what you're missing is if you have a landmark in your life, like a child graduates from grade school or high school, and you look at your spouse and you say, how did we get here? Where did all the time go? Think about how that applies in your life. That time is the time that you were looking out the window or thinking about your grocery list or doing something different than being actually in the present moment with the people around you who matter so much. The last component of the definition is judgment, being non-judgmental with our thoughts. We are so very critical of everything. Every thought that comes to us, we categorize it. It's good, it's bad, it's hot, it's cold, it's rainy, it's sunny. We put it into categories. And with people who come into our lives, we're very quick to judge as well. We can make up our mind on somebody just by the clothes that they're wearing, by their accent, by the color of their skin, and on. But judgmental, the person that we are hardest on is ourselves. We are our harshest critic. And this is so limiting. When we want to try something new in our life, when we want to do something, we have a voice in our head that says, no, you can't do that. You haven't been able to do it in the past. Why do you think you could do it now? We judge ourselves. And we have a lot of material, a lot of baggage, to put into that fuel for judging. So mindfulness is also part unlearning. It's being open to a different way of thinking, maybe looking at, past attitudes, behaviors, knowledge, and seeing, does that fit in my life where I am now? So just being open. And it's possible to change, to make these changes. So, taking us to the present moment and how important it is to be there, think about it this way. If you're not in the present moment, you might be way over here in the past. And when you start to live life in the past, that's when you ruminate, you get depressed, you worry, you're down here, you're gloomy. And if you're not living in the past, you could be way over here in the future. And you're looking around and you're catastrophizing. You're thinking of every possible thing that could go wrong. You've got fear. You've got anxiety. You're overworking. You think overachievement will help you. So let's try this. Just put your pen down if you can, and just put your hands to your side. Okay, so right now we're living in past, we're living in future worry. It's not the present moment. And when you get caught up down here, things can get gray, and they can be very gloomy. And one day looks pretty much like the next day, and you start to believe, I don't deserve to be happy. I just deserve, the gloom, the beige, the gray, no more than this. But here's how you change that. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a very deep breath, and at the same time, we're going to move our hands up to our heart center. Okay? So inhaling deeply. Exhale. Right here is the present moment. Right here in your heart center. And when you start to live from here in the present moment, life unfolds. And just moment by moment by moment by moment. And you know what happens? You awaken. Just put your arms out to the side and stretch if you'd like. Feel how good that feels. You awaken to your very life. All those moments that you've been missing because you're now paying attention. And it's magical. Things really start to happen almost effortlessly. Because when you're paying attention to life, you'll notice that the sun is shining. Greens are greener. Relationships improve because you're paying attention. You're more productive at work because you're engaged. You're doing things. Does that sound kind of like magic? I do. I spin a good story on joy and mindfulness. And, I have to kind of watch it and put in a little bit of fair balance. Because sometimes it's, fair balance because I've been there too. Sometimes it's very hard to get out of bed in the morning. And so it's hard to get back kind of on the joy train. Have you ever had a stretch of time in your life when things were gray and gloomy? But there are things that we can do. We can elevate those thoughts. We don't have to go down into the spiral of negative thinking. And sometimes it's as simple as when you wake up in the morning, doing your breathing exercises, being conscious of the day ahead, welcoming it, showing the simple side. But again, right here, our heart center. In many languages, mindfulness and heartfulness are the same word. And it's not an accident, that it is the same word. We are an achievement society. That's what we do. And that's how we value each other and value ourselves too. What did you do today? What did you make? Where did you go? All of those action things. We don't really always think about that, just sitting for 5 minutes and breathing is a worthy, valuable activity. Yet science shows us over and over again. Dr. Amit Sood from Mayo Clinic says that the brain fatigues after an hour of work, that we're exhausted just after an hour, and he recommends just 1 minute to clear the slate and do some breathing. That can really revitalize you more than grabbing an energy drink, grabbing a cup of coffee. So, next time that during the day at work or at home, if you feel exhausted, just sit down with a glass of water and do some breathing. New things to try. Okay, this is the picture. A lot of you are already familiar with the Riordan Clinic. And I have a long history here, I'll have to tell. Over 20 years ago, I worked here at the clinic for Dr. Riordan. And it was really the most influential time because I learned, the difference between real health and just masking symptoms. So if you're familiar with the clinic here, it's alternative holistic care. And one of the things that impresses me the most is Dr. Riordan he didn't call people patients. Instead, you were a co-learner. So really putting your knowledge of yourself in, a high place. Nobody else can be the expert on you. So when I started to study mindfulness, I approached it in the same way in that Dr. John Kabat-Zinn in Mindfulness, he calls it participatory medicine. So it's putting you high in the equation for your health. That you're not going to just go and have a pill to mask symptoms. You're really interested in getting back to real health. And that's different, and it does take the discipline, it takes the action of you being highly involved. So this is there because in America, we've taken a lot of shortcuts in life. We've got cheeseburgers, we've got pharmaceutical meds, and not that there's anything wrong with either one of them, but if you do too much of either one, pharmaceutical medicines, I was a pharmaceutical rep also. I had a background in alternative holistic health and then pharmaceutical medicine. So I'm a proponent of both sides. Both sides can equal balance. I would never recommend that anybody just get off their meds drastically. But participatory medicine or being a co-learner with your provider says that you should have a very big role in deciding your care and how you feel and being an advocate for your health. 1 in 4 Kansans is on an antidepressant, and that's a very alarming high amount. And it's not, medicine should be, pharmaceutical medicine should be a bridge back to your true health, and it should be maybe down the road if you're participating in your health, you might, suggest, could we change the dosing now? Could we do something a little bit different? So I have a psychiatrist. I just want to say that, and I have for 10 years, and we meet, and it's, we decide as a team my care. Oh, and cheeseburgers. Cheeseburgers are, it's a shortcut again. We've taken some shortcuts in our diets. And I eat a cheeseburger now and then, but, too much of any shortcut, we lose something there. In mindfulness today, they talk about, you can be mindful without sitting, without actually, doing any type of meditation. And, that isn't true. Think about mindfulness, the breathing, the meditation. That's the workout for your mind. Okay? So in a simple meditation, and we're going to do one right now, we're going to do one just following the breath. Would you all be willing to try that? Okay. So just get in your chairs, and after we do, I'll give you a little more instruction. After we do the breathing exercise, there's a card, a little white index card. Okay, we're going to do a reflection. So the card is just for you to write down, after the reflection, to write down your thoughts. And nobody is going to read it. You're going to keep it. But we're going to do a meditation first, and then I'll give you more instructions, okay? So just now get comfortable in your chair. Don't cross your arms or your legs. And you can keep your eyes open, or if you feel comfortable, go ahead and close them. And inviting you to inhale through the nose. Exhaling. Inhaling. Exhaling. And just noticing your breath. How it enters the body, how it exits the body. Just inhaling and exhaling. Just allowing the body and the mind to come together. Observing the breath. And now we're going to do a reflection. I'm going to ask you a question and just explore it in your mind. And then when you're ready, write down your responses on the white card. Okay? So the question is, what do you want? What do you really want? So think about it, but don't overthink. Think about what is on your heart. And when you feel ready, write it down on the white index card. I'll give you a little time to finish writing. Okay, it looks like most of you have finished writing. So think about what came up for you, what you wrote down. You know, it could be something really grand, like you want to write a book. You've always wanted to write a book. It could be something, you know, you want to improve your relationships. You want to get a good night's sleep. Or maybe you want to try a new hobby or a new project. You know, it's all the same. You know, it's what you came from your heart and that you wrote down. You know, and sometimes when we're a little off the joy train, you know, doing a reflection, a thought, an idea doesn't come right away. And that's okay too. You know, being patient and maybe trying this exercise another time, trying it back at home. You know, you might get a different answer. But, you know, thinking about that you and whatever you came up with there, let's just say, you know, writing a book. You've always wanted to write a book. So the first thing, that means taking a risk. You're doing something different, doing outside of what you normally do during the day. So you have to say, I'm going to take this risk. And then you have to say yes. And think about how many times in our minds we are already pre-programmed to say, no, I can't do that. People are counting on me to do this and that. The most important book that I read in 2018 was called The Surrender Experiment. And I don't know if anybody has read that book, but I'll just give you the premise of the book is no matter what comes up in your life, say yes. And that could be, you know, anything that happens, just approach it with an attitude of yes. So if somebody calls you and they say, I want to go to coffee with you, will you meet me? And you might say, you know, at first you think, I don't want to do that. We have nothing in common. You know, you kind of already maybe have a scenario in your mind why you don't want to do it. Instead, say yes and just see what comes from it. It's an amazing book and it's an amazing strategy to try in your life. It's The Surrender Experiment. Yes. And I forget the author's name, but he also wrote The Untethered Soul. Another really good book. But, you know, after you say yes, you still have fears. And so that next stage is to face your fears. And these are some of the things that come up, they could be fears that you've had since childhood, fears that were imposed on you, could be fears or negative reactions that you've had on the job. But, just looking those fears face to face and, realizing you may not need those anymore. You could let it go. You can do something different. You can think differently. And then following your passion. And the passion, again, it's tying back to your heart. What's on your heart? If we spend more time listening to our body, to our intuition, to our instincts, to our gut, that's all of the body's wisdom. We come pre-programmed with a lot of the answers that we need in life. But we're so busy always looking outside for answers, we miss following our heart. So that brings us back to joy and mindfulness. And again, mindfulness are these techniques that bring you back, a bridge back to joy. And then you can see at the very bottom, it's kind of small print, but it's recommit. So that means that the very next day you start again and you take a risk. And you go through the entire process. You say yes. You face your fears. You follow your passion. And again, all this seems, easy and, that you can do it. But this is where really the practice and the discipline come in. And a meditation, when you're building up your mental brain muscle, think about a meditation. You inhale, and then you get distracted, and then you return to your breath. So it's that whole cycle of breathing, distraction, returning. Just that loop going all the way around. Breathing, distraction, returning. That builds up the muscle in your brain. And I'm going to get into some science as well. I'll go back and talk science with this slide. But, what neuroscientists are finding now is that we can actually change the structure of our brain with meditation. So to me, that is so very, very exciting. There's a book called Altered Traits, and this came out last year as well, and it's Richie Davison and Dan Goleman wrote this book. But they are neuroscientists from Harvard, and for 40 years they've also been best friends. So 40 years ago, they would go off to India and they would meditate, and maybe for weeks or months. Then they would come back to Harvard and they would propose a research project. Hey, we see these benefits of meditation. Can we do this project? And Harvard would say, no, not at this time. Imagine 40 years ago, that was pretty fringe to suggest meditation and health and benefits. But now, the researchers who were doing this 40 years ago are writing best-selling books, and they're coming out with phenomenal research that supports the ideas, the premises that they had. So Altered Traits, they measured brains of people who were not like heavy-duty meditators, but people who meditated 20 minutes a day consistently, and they found that the very structure of their brains changed. So they measured the size of the amygdala, and that's the fight, flight, or freeze response. That would shrink. And then the prefrontal cortex with logic and reasoning actually grew larger. And these are just, medium-sized meditators, not gurus off in India, but American meditators who have lives and families. I think that's so exciting that we can do that. And fair balance, I do have to say, because I get very excited about mindfulness, that contraindications. So, you hear that a lot, pharmaceuticals, but, with mindfulness and meditation, you don't want to just jump off the deep end and say, I'm going to start meditating an hour a day. And especially if you're going through like a troubled time or navigating some real challenges in your life. Approach this with a trusted physician, a provider who can help you find balance in your life, because that's the main point. Are there any questions about anything now?
So I own a yoga studio, and I have a client who came to me. I just quit all my meds, and I'm just going to bring and I strongly encourage her to connect with her doctor, because some of them were like blood pressure, thyroid medication, things like that. And she did connect with her doctor, obviously, to like reiterate, like, yeah, you actually need these things. I'm just wondering, like, how do you better explain to people, yes, there is a physiological value to this, but we're playing like the nature game, as in it takes time for things to grow, not like instantly overnight. And because as a mindfulness practitioner, there's not a whole lot of connection with the medical industry in being able to relate the value and connect as far as their patients go. So it's kind of like, how do you bridge that gap?
That's a wonderful question. And again, I'm going to try to repeat it as best as I can because they are recording it. But, how to bridge the gap between Western medicine and more holistic mindfulness treatments. And, you had the experience, you own a yoga studio, and you talked about patients or clients who come in and they say, I'm, getting off all my meds, whether it's blood pressure, thyroid, anxiety, or depression, just leaving that. And how do you advise, people that come to you like that? I think you have to advise in that co-learner, that participatory medicine type of way. Because science now is opening the door. It's giving people tremendous nudges that, oh my gosh, mindfulness really works. And the 40 years of research that has been going on, the evidence that's there, the scientific evidence, is in areas of blood pressure, chronic pain, depression, anxiety, heart disease, all of these are there. But, you don't go from 0 to 60. It's a building process. You don't just drop all your meds. That could be, crisis, whichever category that you're in. That's just not a good thing to do. But also not a good thing to do is just to be idle in your own health. Because, science, while it provides all these, amazing statistics and large studies, the most important study that we can do is ourselves, and really tuning into our own bodies and taking time to listen and be quiet. So it's really that, joint work together of, your provider, Western medicine, and yourself, and your holistic. So does that, yeah, and it makes sense, doesn't it, too? That, we shouldn't be that radical if we've done something, for 20, 30 years, that all of a sudden, to change like that. But gradual changes and having confidence in the changes, too. Confidence in yourself and trusting yourself. Are there any other questions? Okay, another important study that's coming on about mindfulness is in the area of epigenetics. And epigenetics is really looking at, and they've looked at epigenetics, for a long time on nutrition and exercise. So genetics, it's hard to change your DNA. A lot of it comes pre-programmed from our parents, from our grandparents. Say that you've had a family history of cancer. Excuse me. Again, a family history of cancer. And epigenetic looks at, what makes cancer turn on in your body and not your brother's. What are the genetic factors? And epigenetics says that you can change those, that you can really beat the odds with nutrition, with exercise. But more than that, too, that now they're finding that our very thoughts, that what we think about, how we view our health, if we meditate, can also turn on those genes or turn off those genes. So another, really positive thing about meditation. But stress and, how you figure into the whole world of stress, mindfulness puts control back in your hands. And, I said before, my life didn't change. I still had all the stressor events. But with mindfulness, you control your reaction to stress. And that's where the true magic is. By inserting the pause, by coming from a response instead of reacting, and, always treating something like I'm on fire. I've got to do it immediately. And, being in that chronic stress loop, mindfulness can help you exit that and get more control in your life. this is what control could look like. It looks more just like balance. You're not frantic. You're not on the hamster wheel of life. You're accomplishing things. You're really more productive because you don't have all the negative self-talk going on. You're not dwelling in the past. You're not consumed with the future. You're just right here and now. I do a couple of different classes here at the Riordan Clinic, and if you're interested in learning more about it, we have some information in the back to tell you about those. And then I also do quite a bit of things on community-wide. So we do a free community meditation here in the Pyramid once a month. So very pleased about those. And the biggest takeaway message, that I'd like you to leave with is, joy. It's not out of reach. Joy is really, it's the ability to be happy no matter what happens in life. So it's not a jumping on the bed joy, but just to be balanced and to accept the highs in your life and the lows. And it's our birthright. So it's what we're programmed to do here. So here's my contact information. I'm here in town locally. So I would love to open it up to any comments that you have or questions. Excuse me? Yes, and I think we have a list in the back of, is that right there in front? I don't have my glasses on. Excuse me, Lisa, did we bring a list of the science, some articles or resources? Yes. Yeah, right here. Okay, yeah, we have a list in the back of resources that are available for mindfulness, classes that we do here, also some books, some apps that are on the phone. Yeah, so that sheet is in the back. Do that. But there's a lot of great things out there, for mindfulness to support you. It's a great time to be living in. And I have a couple of giveaways today, and Dr. Ann will help me with that.
You guys have your evaluations filled out. I'll go ahead and select those, and we'll do the drawing from those.
Okay.
What is your favorite app for meditation? Do you have a favorite?
I do. I have a favorite app. It's Insight Timer, if you're familiar with that one, and it's free. It's on iPhone, and I'm sure it's on the Android as well. But Insight Timer, they have over 10,000 different guided meditations. So you could just type in, sleep. We talked about sleep today, and they come up with like a list of different meditations that you can listen to for free. Or they just have a timer that you can, time your time that's sitting, doing your breathing. And it's kind of neat because they track your progress. So it's a kind of a reward that you see how many days consistently you've meditated. And then you can see how many people in the world have meditated at the same time with you, or people just in the near area, people in Kansas.